It is time for our Week 6 college football Saturday selections. It's been a really interesting week to watch some of these lines move. You had games like Purdue at Penn State, where the line's gone from 16.5 point in Penn State's favor all the way to 28.5. So with these weird line jumps, I don't feel quite as good about my picks as I did earlier in the week, but without further ado, we'll get right into things with a noon Eastern kickoff over on Fox as the Iowa Hawkeyes travel to the Big House to take on the Michigan Wolverines, who are a 3.5 point home favorite. It opened at 7, just in case you were wondering. This game for me comes down to the fact that Michigan has had trouble running the football so far this season, and their offensive line is going to have to do a better job going up against this Iowa defense that's really, really good. However, you might want to throw away what Michigan did against Rutgers last weekend. That's fair because Rutgers has struggled against virtually everybody and they just fired their head coach. But Michigan offensive coordinator Josh Gattis came down to the field to call plays last week, and that was something a lot of people in and around the Michigan program raved about after that game. Maybe that's something that helps the Wolverines moving forward, maybe not. But going into this game, I think that might provide a little bit of a spark, and Shea Patterson will make a couple of big throws. I like Michigan at home over Iowa, 23-19. Another noon Eastern kickoff, this one over on FS1. The Oklahoma State Cowboys travel to Lubbock to take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This line has gone from 7 points in Oklahoma State's favor to 10. Well, Texas Tech absolutely dominated Oklahoma State last year in Stillwater, so maybe there's a little bit of revenge on the mind of these Oklahoma State players. However, the key for me in this game is that Oklahoma State features a very strong rushing attack led by star running back Chuba Hubbard, who is starting to receive a lot more national press. However, Texas Tech has had issues stopping the run, and their starting quarterback Alan Bowman will once again miss this game due to an injury. For those reasons, I don't think Texas Tech is capable of keeping pace with this potent Oklahoma State offense. So I'm going with Oklahoma State on the road to beat the Texas Tech Red Raiders 37-23. Jumping ahead now to a 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one over on ABC as the Texas Longhorns travel to Morgantown, West Virginia to take on the West Virginia Mountaineers. The Longhorns are a 10.5 point road favorite. This is a trap game of sorts for Texas because, of course, Oklahoma comes next week in the Red River rivalry game. And if you look back the last couple of seasons, Texas has struggled the week before that game. However, West Virginia beat Texas last year down in Austin. So I think these Longhorn players will take this game seriously because they want to show out against the West Virginia team that beat them last year down in their place. I also think the key in this game is that West Virginia might try to slow this game down and limit the amount of possessions that Sam Ehlinger and this Texas offense get, but that might play against their advantage because their quarterback Austin Kendall, who comes from Oklahoma and that quicker offense, Kendall has really struggled when West Virginia has gone into this slow ball control type of offense. He's excelled this year when they speed things up a little bit. So if they try to grind this game to a halt to limit Texas's possessions, I think that plays into Texas's hands, and I just think this Longhorns team has way too much firepower for these West Virginia Mountaineers. I like Texas on the road to get a win this week, 33-21. Another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's over on ESPN. The Virginia Tech Hokies travel to South Beach to take on the Miami Hurricanes. This line has moved from 8.5 in Miami's favor all the way to 14. Well, I like this line a lot more 8.5 than I did at 14. But Miami's a team that's had offensive line issues, so I'd expect them to come out in this game and try to get the football out of Jaron Williams' hands quickly. Williams has really rebounded nicely from that rough season opening performance against Florida, and I think that this game will be his first real chance in front of a national audience to have a coming out party. He's been accurate, and I think this is an ideal game for tight end Brevin Jordan. He's extremely talented, and this Virginia Tech defense has had issues stopping passing plays to the tight end. On the other side of the football, Virginia Tech has questions at quarterback, and I feel like they might have a turnover or two. Miami's going to want to break that turnover chain out. I like the Hurricanes at home. I liked it a lot more at 8.5, like I said, but I'm going with Miami at home to win this football game 30-14. Jumping ahead now to a primetime game on ESPN. It's a 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff as the Georgia Bulldogs are a 24.5-point favorite as they head to Neyland Stadium to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Here's something that I've kind of been keeping my eye on for Georgia. It seems like their offense hasn't been putting other teams away quite like these other top 5 or 6 teams do. Why is that important? Well, remember those 2 games against Alabama where they had those big leads that they blew? Their offense didn't put the game away when they had the chance. And that's kind of been a trend that we've continued to see so far this season. While other top teams are putting the game away and not letting these inferior teams hang around, that's not something Georgia has done. While they won comfortably against Vanderbilt, Vandy had chances late in that game back in week 1 to make it closer than it really was. Look at the Notre Dame game. The Fighting Irish had a chance to win that game late despite Georgia at one point having a nice lead. That said, this Tennessee team has major questions at quarterback. It just seems like this Vols team is thinking way too much out on the field, and I just think Georgia is going to be able to continue doing what they've been doing. They'll get up early. They'll let the defense finish the deal. I like Georgia on the road to beat the Tennessee Volunteers 31-6. Another primetime game, this one over on Fox. The Cal Golden Bears are an 18-point road underdog as they travel to Autzen Stadium to take on the Oregon Ducks. This line originally was at 15. Of course, it's at 18 now, like I mentioned. Well, Cal is going to be without starting quarterback Chase Garbers in this game. Remember, he got hurt last week against Arizona State. And I think that's going to be a big detriment to this Cal team, especially considering that this Oregon defense, while it doesn't receive as much national attention as other defenses, has been really solid in their own right. I think Oregon's offense finds enough points against this good Cal D, and I don't think Cal is able to really move the football at all against the Ducks. So I'm going with Oregon at home, big. I originally had this one 31-13. That'd be right at the current 18-point line. So I'm going to shift it up a bit. I'm going to go Oregon 34-13. Don't feel great about it because the line moved, but I do like this Oregon team against the Cal team that looks a bit lost on offense without quarterback Chase Garbers. Another game out in the Pac-12. It's some Pac-12 after dark on ESPN as the Washington Huskies are a 16.5-point favorite as they travel to the Farm to take on the Stanford Cardinal. Well, Washington hasn't won in Palo Alto since 2007, so while that's a bit concerning, you have a Stanford team that's going to be without quarterback KJ Costello, and while his replacement Davis Mills looked good against Oregon State last week, and he was a guy who was a highly regarded high school recruit, I believe he was a 5-star kid, Stanford still just seems to be missing something this season, especially up front on the offensive line and in that defensive secondary. I think that matters against a Washington team that has a good passing attack led by Jacob Eason. I think Washington puts this game away late. I like the Huskies over Stanford. I'm going with UW on the road 38-14. Another big game on this Saturday in prime time. The Michigan State Spartans travel to Columbus to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. This line's gone from 17 points in Ohio State's favor to 20. This game comes down to the fact that Michigan State's just been too inconsistent so far this season. I like what their offense has done. They've done a much better job up front along their offensive line, as well as finishing drives in the red zone. But they did that against Northwestern and Indiana the last 2 weeks, and this Ohio State defense is going to represent a whole nother type of challenge for them. Meanwhile, their cornerbacks and then this secondary have had issues in the game against Indiana. Maybe they're looking ahead of this Ohio State showdown game, but if they have any type of issues in the secondary, Ohio State is going to exploit them in this game with Justin Fields and this high-powered Ohio State offense really doing anything they wanted against Nebraska last weekend. I just think Michigan State has to play a near-perfect football game or catch a lot of breaks for this game to even get to the fourth quarter. So while I do like this Michigan State defense a lot, especially up front, I just think Ohio State gets up again and cruises to the finish line. I'm going Ohio State at home to win 40-35. 14. And now to the game of the week. It's a big SEC game that pits two top 10 undefeated teams. The Auburn Tigers are a 2.5-point favorite as they travel to the Swamp to take on the Florida Gators. It is a 3:30 p.m. kickoff over on CBS in the SEC game of the week. 25 years ago, Patrick Nix had a breakout game against Mississippi State and then led his Auburn Tigers on the road into the Swamp to take down a number 1 ranked Florida team. This Florida team isn't ranked number 1, but Bo Nix had a breakout game last week against Mississippi State, and now he takes his Auburn Tigers team into the Swamp versus a top 10 Florida team. It's weird how things work out, but in regards to this specific game, I think it comes down to the fact that Florida has had a lot of trouble running the football so far this season, and they're going to be going up against an Auburn defense that just shut down one of the better backs in the country in Mississippi State runner Kylan Hill. Florida's offensive line got called out by their head coach Dan Mullen after the Towson game last week, and I just think that's not where they want to be going up against Auburn. While I do think Florida has a really good defense in their own right that's more than capable of providing a real test to Bo Nix and this Auburn offense, it just feels like if this game does come down to the line of scrimmage, I just trust Auburn's defensive line going up against Florida's offensive line a little bit more in what's going to be probably a very close physical football game. So right now I'm going to lean with Auburn on the road to come away with the win 22-19 on Saturday afternoon in our game of the week.